The stories that are the headlines.
And the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez.
I'm Lingao. It's Tuesday, February 27, and here are some stories on One News. China insists Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal, what it calls Huang Yandao, is their territory after it reinstalled floating barriers in the area. Beijing says it had to take necessary measures to fight off Manila's supposed infringement on their sovereignty. Reuters earlier obtained satellite images showing new barriers across the territory's entrance. There are also reports that China is planning to install signal jammers around disputed waters.
Meantime, the Philippine Coast Guard's Facebook page was hacked yesterday. PCG is looking at an online security breach through a malware as a possible reason. The agency is currently coordinating with Meta for the recovery of the page. We will recall that on February 15, the PCG's X or Twitter account was also briefly compromised.
And one of 6 policemen tagged in the murder of Jemboy Baltasar has been found guilty of homicide. 4 others were convicted for illegal discharge of firearms, while 1 was acquitted. 17-year-old Jemboy was shot to death in August of 2023. He was mistaken by cops for a murder suspect.
Okay, let's just recall that those floating barriers were probably the same barriers that were taken down.
Ito yung
by the Coast Guard.
Yung ginipit,
Yes,
hindi mo ginipit, yung nilagari o
yeah.
ano.
During the time of
Just last year.
yeah, just last
It
year.
was just last year. I remember the video.
And there was no resistance back then. So what happened now is they simply put up those barriers, new barriers again.
Baka tali lang naman yun. But do we have images of the barriers? I don't think we have images. It was a satellite photo, so it's not. It's probably not that. Anyway, it's at the entrance of I think the lagoon of Scarborough Shoal. Minsan nakakapasok yung mga Pilipino mga isla.
Yes, so much action and controversy in this part of the West Philippine Sea, no? Mabao de Masinloc is just how many nautical miles from Zambales? It's very close.
Yeah, I think it's 160 mga ganun. Basta walang 200 yan.
Wala sa 200. It's
so
well within
EEZ.
Well within our EEZ, and at the same time, it's the traditional fishing ground of Filipino
I
fishermen.
understand before then it was a traditional bombing range.
When the United States Air Force was still in Clark Air Base, yes. And other than that, we know Bao Masinloc to be also the site for this 2014, I understand, standoff between the Chinese maritime militia and the Philippine Coast Guard.
2012 or 2013.
2012, right.
Nagkagirian dyan at umabot sa punto na China started rejecting our exports, our banana exports, and they let them rot in the port.
Was it bananas or
Bananas, mostly bananas.
Yes,
And
yes.
bananas kasi madali malamog eh.
Yes, and our loss of Bao de Masinloc back then was the reason why we went to The Hague
The Hague, yeah.
for arbitration. Right.
So that was China's way of putting economic pressure on us kasi you're going head to head at that
It was
time.
actually surprising, Bok, that when the PCG, the Coast Guard, decided to dismantle those floating barriers last year, there was hardly any resistance from the
Yeah,
Chinese
that was
government.
surprising. I
No event, no incident happened whatsoever, but now
And I don't
they're
even remember if
back.
they complained.
They didn't complain.
I don't remember if they complained. I mean, if they complained, they would have made a big issue out of it. But
Yes,
I don't remember that.
we don't recall a big noise happening as a result of that action by the Philippine Coast Guard.
Kasi that's when you touch somebody else's
Property, especially government
property or equipment. You might call it equipment.
Right,
Equipment,
right.
ibang usapan yun eh. Although in the same way that remember before near Paez Island, our Navy, they were recovering some pieces of rocket debris from China.
And they were demanding that they be returned, right?
No, hindi lang yun. The Chinese Coast Guard came in a small boat and they cut our ropes.
Ganun-ganun lang.
Ganun lang. Wala tayong nagawa. They cut, kasi we were towing it, I think, back to Paez Island. And then the Chinese Coast Guard came in small rubber boats. Of course, they had the big boats there as well. And then they cut the ropes. Parang
Okay, but
sabi niya.
let's move on from West Philippine Sea and Baho de Masinloc now to the Batasan on a totally different issue, but still on charter change. We now bring in Marian Enriquez of News 5. Marian,
Hello, magandang hapon. Patrick and Block.
Go, Bok, go.
yes, first question.
actually,
Yes, first question, Marian. We were hearing from Senate President Miguel Zubiri yesterday that he's quoting the president saying that the president wants the plebiscite to be timed with the 2025 elections in February, next year or May?
May.
Next year. So, is this also the position of the House of Representatives? Because we know the House to be quite in a hurry that these economic provisions be passed already and resolved.
yeah. Una, tama ka dyan, Patrick, kasi natuwa sila na mismo galing na sa Pangulo na gusto nga niya talaga na magtulak ng economic charter change, no? Pagbaguhin ito ng konstitusyon. Pero doon sa timeline na binanggit, medyo nag-aalangan nga yung isa nga dito sa Assistant Majority Leader na si Congressman Adjong. Sinasabi niya na mapupolitika. Ganito rin yung stand ni Deputy Speaker Danilo Suarez, JJ Suarez, kumbaga, na sinabi niya na mapupolitika yung 2025 elections kung isasabay nga yung plebisito ng economic tasa. Sinabi kasi ni Adjong na baka magamit pa ito sa midterm elections, yung mga pangangampanya, magkaroon pa ng campaign slogan, kumbaga, yung paggamit nga dito.
Wait, so sorry, Bok, I got confused there. So you mean these congressmen are against having it at the same time as the 2025 elections because baka magamit sa kampanya? Or they want it before?
Ang gusto nila sana ay before. Actually, kasasabi lang kanina ni Deputy Majority Leader, tumatay yung floor leader dito sa Committee of the Whole, Neptali Gonzalez II, na isasalang na nila, nakatakdang isalang sa second reading itong resolution of 4,000 number 7, economic data, by second week of March. So after noon, 11, 12, 13, March 11, 12, 13, kung maipasa sa second reading, maghihintay lang ng 3 days alisunod sa rules ng House, tsaka nila isasalang naman sa third reading. So, malamang talaga, tapos na po ang RBH 7
By Holy Week,
Kamara,
tapos na yan.
bago mag-Holy Week talaga. Bago mag-Holy Week break ang session.
Kasi Holy Week is March 24, I think, mga ganun eh.
Tama. Oo, tama ka dyan, Bok. So, yun yung nakikita natin na timeline ngayon. Ipapasa nila ito, posibleng maipasa. Bago nga yung Holy Week.
Preno muna, atas muna. Kasi nagulan ako dun sa ang unang nilang agreement, going back to January 11, in the later discussions, akala ko na pagkasunod pa rin to. I thought the agreement from then until now is pabayaan muna yung Senado, tapusin lahat, at ipapasa sa Kamara, at ang Kamara i-consider at i-approve. So, isasabay talaga nila? Didmahan na yung unang ng pagkasunduan? Isasabay talaga nila?
Well, base sa narinig natin kanina, yun yung nakikitang timeline ng majority, no?
Okay, kasi mukha may recent timeline.
Second week of March. Pero remember, Bok, nagsabi rin, sinituro ng Kamara, ang Senado, Senate President Mig Zubiri, na nauna na nagsabi na before Holy Week break, ipapasa po itong economic data. So, sinasabi nga kanina ni Congressman Adjong, yun yung original planning, diba? Parang gano'n.
Also, balikan ko lang kahapon natin pinag-uusapan na I remember sabi mo nga kahapon, ang sabi ni Speaker dyan ay adapt namin en toto yung tatlong economic provisions na gusto tulak ng
kahapon lang yun.
Kahapon lang yun. Sabi niya kahapon yan, di ba? I think nung sinimulan na yung Committee on the Whole. And wala namang problema dun di ba? Kasi dekahon na yun Diba sabi nga natin, those are bare minimums. Pero hindi ata nabanggit kung paano yung botohan. So doon ako umuwi parati.
Kanina, pagbubukas pa lang nung Committee of the Whole, yan agad yung bungad. Si Albay Representative Edsel Lagman. Tinanong niya, paano to? Parehong-pareho. In total nga, tatlong provision. Ito lang yung gusto baguhin ng Senado. Ito yung babaguhin natin sa Kamara. RBH 6, RBH 7.
No problem.
3 provision. Economic, okay. paano naman itong linyang to? Voting separately ang Senado, tapos sa atin sa Kamara,
About the
alinsunod
three-fourths.
sa Konstitusyon, 3/4 of all members of Congress. So, ang binanggit nga rito, tinanong ni Congressman Albay, what if there's an impasse? Anong mangyayari? This was his statement. Would say there is no need for this. Who and how will the impasse be resolved? Ang sagot ng tumayong floor leader na si Deputy Majority Leader Neptali Gonzales
Okay,
second
ano?
nga. If our resolution, even though we approved it by a vote of 3/4, will reach the Senate, and the Senate will not do anything about it, and then that's it. Wala nang tatayong pag-uusapan na amendment.
Sorry, Bok.
Then
Teka. Rewind. Ulit. Ano sagot niya?
Ang sagot ni Congressman Gonzales, Neptali Gonzales, if our resolution, even though we approved it by a vote of 3/4, will reach the Senate, and the Senate will not do anything about that, then that's it. Wala na tayong pag-uusapan na amendment. Then it's dead.
Oh, okay. So they're putting the burden on the Senate to make that approval para matapos na itong usapin ng charter change revisions, no?
So nilinaw pa nga ulit yung nilagman. If there's no concurrence between the House and the Senate on this proposed amendment, the proposed amendments are dead in the waters. Sabi ni Gonzales, yun ho ang posisyon natin palaging sinasabi. Unless both houses of Congress will be able to approve the proposed amendments in the manner 3/4 of vote of all members, and then there will be no proposed amendment to speak of. Basta patay na po.
So walang remediation, ganon? Walang back channeling, walang discussions to find a common line for the voting, ganon?
Well,
Then
it seems
dito na nga, may
it seems
question
Bok, it's
si,
consistent with their
dating-
the way I appreciate this discussion sort of back and forth since yesterday, it seems consistent with their position na in toto. Ngayon, kung walang approval yung Senado, di it's dead. Parang ganun sinasabi ng House
No,
ni
all or
Congressman, ni Majority Leader Gonzales, right?
Tama.
So all or nothing,
Sa tanong
ganon?
naman ni Bo,
Oo. And let's clarify lang, Congressman Edsel Lagman is interpolating. He's not a member of the House leadership, right? So he's interpolating as a, should we say,
Interpolating.
opposition legislator?
independent opposition, yes.
Yes. Okay.
So sa tanong ni Bo, kung paano yun, wala na ba? Nag-suggest kanina si retired Associate Justice Ascuna, sinabi nga niya na pwede pa yung pag-usapan kung may mga small differences, minor differences, may BICAM committee. They can come out with the same version and then
And
approve
who
it
is
again,
this? Sorry,
the
ma'am.
unified
Who is
version.
this giving that opinion?
Adolf.
Justice
Adolf
Adolfo
Acuna.
Ascuna.
Okay.
Yes.
Member of the 1987 Constitutional Commission, right?
Yeah, and former Supreme Court Justice.
Oh yes, but
Yes.
okay, but largely this is going to be decided by members of the House of Representatives, right,
Yes.
Maan, and the House
So he
leadership.
was invited, yes, tama, as a resource speaker. Oo.
Al-
Kahapon,
alam mo, Maan, I think we should find out from our legislators, from Congressman you there, no? I mean, how much writing of the law or wording of the law needs to be done? Kasi we're just talking about lifting the restrictions in the Constitution rather than really crafting a Republic Act or something like that, right?
yes.
So, parang halos yes or no lang to, Bok, eh. Kung tatanggalin mo yung restrictions sa mga provision, 3 provisions on public services or utilities, on advertising, and on education. All that needs to be done is really to say na no limits or limited to a certain percentage ang foreign ownership of foreign money or foreign capital na pwede pumasok sa mga industriya nito.
Tama.
Right? Yun lang naman pinakamagiging. They're not crafting a law, Bo. They're amending, they're revising the Constitution. In fact,
Yes.
I imagine that after the revisions, there will maybe be a need for a Republic Act
Yes,
Parang
tama
ano,
ka.
to
enabling
enforce, to flesh out the provisions of this Constitution. That's usually the process. Okay. So in
Tama.
a way,
Doon na nila
man,
nilalagay.
mabilis lang talaga din to. Mabilis lang.
Tama.
Kumbaga, they just have to
Yes,
decide
okay.
whether to lift the restrictions or not.
Well, they have to agree.
They have to agree. But so,
On the wording.
well, yeah. Well, I think the biggest contention was really the voting.
Yeah, yun nga eh.
It was really the voting. And then what we're hearing, man, is hindi na pinipilit yung voting as one. Hinahayaan na nila yung Senado.
Yes. Ang gusto na nila parang sitting jointly pero voting separately. 3/4 bumoto kayo dyan, 3/4 bumoto kami rito.
Teka, ang gusto pa nila talaga is sitting jointly. Ibig sabihin, they want the senators to be there as well, even though they vote separately, because you will need infrastructure for that. I mean,
That's what Congressman Lagman was pushing. Kasi sinasabi niya na, Constituent Assembly tayo. At sa ilalim ng Constitution, 3 modes lang yan. So,
Yeah.
the vote act,
Again, man,
dapat ganun.
Again, man, context, Congressman Lagman is interpolating as de facto
Interpolating.
opposition legislator. Yes. So, but
Yes.
in this case, kasi Bok, we need to see the signals coming from the House leadership and what their position is.
Tasman, as of yesterday, and I suppose as of today then, the House position still is, tell me if I'm getting this right, the position of the House still is that it is voting separately.
Yes.
Yeah.
They will vote. The House members, 3/4 vote. Yes,
Oo.
on their own.
Voting separately. But on the other hand, there's refusal from both chambers to, at least on the surface, there's refusal, although there's agreement by both chambers on how to vote and voting separately, there's refusal by both chambers to
Sit
put it,
together.
to put it down in writing.
Which one?
Voting separately.
What is in right?
Kasi ang Senate, it's already in writing, voting separately.
Yes.
Ang House, it's not in writing.
Yes,
It's
copy
just
the
voting with
Constitution.
3/4.
Well, if the manifestation yesterday by Majority Leader Gonzales, Naphtali Gonzales, was done on the floor, then it's a matter of record there in the House of Representatives, right, Maan?
Yes, tama.
Yeah, but it's a matter of record, but
It's a matter of record.
It's not in the
Well,
it's not in the resolution.
what
Paper.
sort of
It has to be-
writing, in what form? I'm just
No,
wondering. Bok,
the resolution itself. Kasi
the
he made that
resolution.
he made that explanation in answer to a question. It's different if you make an amendment in the resolution itself to amend a certain line. I'm not saying.
Well,
I'm not
a
saying
lot
which,
of this is procedural,
Yeah.
Bok. In fact, the resolution of both houses,
RBH.
is number 7. I think the one in the House of Representatives does not also say either voting separately or jointly.
No, it does not. It just
does
says
not.
parang in the Constitution.
But given the absence in that resolution, I think we would have to go with or hold them with what's the official pronouncement by the Deputy Speaker Boyd Gonzales.
Who is now on the line. Joining us right now is House Deputy Speaker Boyd Gonzales. Man, maraming salamat. We'll come in with the Deputy Speaker Gonzales. Sir, magandang hapon and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Dr. Ed at Patrick. Good afternoon sa ating mga taga-subaybay din.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Sir, we really appreciate your coming in. I know you're probably in session right now, but and we do appreciate it. Sir,
Nag-suspend naman kami to
Yes, sir.
give way
But-
to the session.
yes, sir. But
Balik kami
a
sa
lot of
committee.
questions, sir. Yes, sir. But a lot of questions, sir. For clarity lang, for everybody's peace of mind. Kasi nga, my understanding is, I think our understanding is, as per your discussions yesterday dun sa Committee of the Whole, the House agrees to vote separately.
Ay, hindi lang nag-agree because it's hindi ang pagkakaiba lang naman ng aming resolution first and foremost ang pagkakaiba namin ng Senate saka ng House meron kami sa House we have adopted our rules
Yes,
that
sir.
included on how to amend the Constitution via resolution. Ang Senate wala silang rule. And under our rule, the moment we opt to do a amendment by resolution, then it will follow the same procedure as adopting a bill. And adopting a bill, it needs 3 readings, first,
Opo.
second, and
Opo.
then third reading.
Opo.
And then pag natapos na kami, papadala namin sa Senate yun for their action. Parang bill, kahit na meron kaming bill na pinadala sa Senate at wala naman silang action, it does not become a law. Wala yun. Dahil kasi kailangan yun. So ito, yung amin is already a guarantee sa kanila that we are voting separately.
Opo.
Talagang pagbobotohan namin dito, pagbobotohan din nila. Kasi kung halimbawa, padala namin ito, we are able to send our resolution. Kahit na sabihin natin unanimously ma-approve namin, pero walang action ng Senate, then nothing will come out of it. Wala yun. Dahil
Certainly,
kasi,
sir.
we need, the Constitution requires that both of houses should approve it, not 3/4 vote. And we are doing it separately. We are meeting separately and we are voting separately. Yun ang nangyayari. Ang problema lang nila, I think, the reason why they have to put voting separately, dahil they still have to adopt a rule yata, the Senate rule, in order for regarding a proceeding on how to amend the Constitution. Pero ako naman, the mere fact that they have a committee on constitutional amendment, the mere fact that there is already an RBH 6 that is pending na hinihir nila is already a confession that they have that power. Kaya ang wala lang sila yung the rules. What ang rule nila na gagamitin in order to approve it. Meron kami. Kaya wala kami problema.
Congressman, so essentially there's really no more disagreement with the Senate.
Wala. Nagkakaroon lang parang nagkakaroon ng short disagreement dahil sa kanilang resolution nakalagay. Resolved by members of Congress voting separately nakalagay. Sa amin yun, walang nakalagay na voting separately because we will really vote separately because in accordance with our rules, kailangan padala namin sa Senate ito. Pero ako naman, ang suggestion ko, kung halimbawa, kung yun lang ang magiging problema, at the period of amendment, nothing prevents us from inserting also to accommodate yung gusto ng Senate na ilagay na rin doon na voting separately para in the event that they are able to approve that, are able to approve this, then an exact mirror of each other. Kaya wala nang bycam. Yun lang.
Congressman, help us appreciate the kind of drafting or wording that needs to go into these revisions in the Constitution. Is it as simple as lifting the restrictions or you see certain kumbaga need for amendments or revisions na parang bicameral?
No. Tatlo lang naman naman ang proposed amendment yung sa issuance of franchise sa public utility, education, saka sa media, media. Ang karamihan lang naman doon that refers to the proportional yung 60-40 or whatever na ang ginagawa mo lang namin unless otherwise ito ang sharing that I say this is the sharing in media, this is the sharing in utility, this is the sharing unless otherwise na magkaroon ng congressional law later. Meaning kung halimbawa, even on the assumption that we are able to approve yung aming both houses of Congress, pero walang law na naipapasa, then kung ano na nakalagay sa Constitution will continue until such time that Congress will be able to pass a law to change yung portion.
Okay, can we go into into the thinking of the House of Representatives or the House leadership regarding these three amendments or these three revisions on advertising, on education, on public utilities? What sort of percentages are you looking at?
Wala ba si Adolf Ascuna kanina, ang ating Supreme Court Associate Justice, while sinasabi niya what sinasabi na iba, it opens to the possibility of having 100% ownership of foreign law. Ang suggestion niya para rin the economy of the country rests in the hands of Filipino. Ang gawin na lang is 51, maximum na 51% ang foreigner at 49% ang Filipino. Pero syempre it will depend on the discretion of the Congress that will enact that law. Pero yun ang suggestion niya. Wag naman sa 100% para just to make sure that the the economy of our country still rests in the hands of the Filipino, kahit na you are ceding 51% of that. Kasi
Congressman,
without 51%, wala namang kung bibigyan mo, you are trying to entice foreign investors to invest in our country. Pero wala naman silang control, mahirapan din naman tayo. At least, with 51%, may control sila.
Okay, Congressman, do we know if this is also the same preference of the President? There's foreign control, but there is substantial Filipino ownership in these industries.
Yeah. Meron naman. Pero yung kasi I'm just responding to the call na how you distribute the ownership. So as I said, it will depend to the next Congress. Depende yung mga what will be the position of the government taking into consideration what is needed economically by our country. It will depend sa mga kung ano i-present sa mga data sa Congress later.
Okay.
It might be this Congress or Congresses to come.
Okay.
Well, sir, that's an interesting proposal coming from Justice Ascuna, 5149. But in the end, of course, it will be Congress and the Senate to decide on this. And what if the two chambers decide on different proportions? How will that be resolved if the two chambers are not going to deliberate jointly?
No. Law yun law. When we amend the Constitution by at ma-approve on the plebiscite, yung nakalagay na unless otherwise provided for by law, then it will pass to the regular legislative mean, di ba? Now, any disagreement, if there is a version of the House and there is a version of the Senate, magkaiba ang portion, then magkakaroon ng bangkam, and hopefully magka-agree sila. Kung hindi sila magka-agree, then wala. There should be a next attempt to make a law for that matter.
Yes, sir. Sir, did I get it right? What you're saying basically is that the idea is that for Congress to just lift the restriction and then pass a law separately, putting in the percentages.
As I've said, without a law, hindi naman automatic na
Yes, sir.
let us say, di ba, katulad yan, nakalagay 60-40, no?
Yes, sir.
Unless otherwise provided for by law. This amendment, if it will come to pass, should be submitted to the plebiscite
Yes,
to
sir.
be approved by the people. Now, when it is approved by the plebiscite, then nagkakaroon na ngayon na authority ang Congress
Yes, sir.
to enact a law.
Yes, sir.
And then it will now be an ordinary law, unlike what is now happening. How to change that will be through itong constitutional change na napakahirap because palagi may issue dyan. Do we meet separately or jointly? Do we vote jointly? Pero at least when you say enacted into law, unless otherwise enacted into law, then what we now know on how a bill becomes a law will now be followed. Yun ang ngayon na mangyayari. So kung may disagreement, magkakaroon ng baitan yan.
Yes, sir. Sir, pasikita lang. Baka kailangan nyo umalis, pero pasikita lang yung last question. Sir, did I get it right kanina? Did I understand you correctly when I think you said something like if it has to come to that, willing ang Congress to amend and put in voting separately if it comes to that, just so that magkasundo?
Sabi ko kasi, wala naman kami ginagawa ngayon we are not voting separately. Because for the resolution that we are trying to adopt is something that has to be adopted by the Senate din
Yes, sir.
Separately.
Yes,
diba?
sir.
Pag hindi niya in-adapt yan, baliwala yan, di ba? Tulugan ng Senate yan, baliwala yan, di ba? So sa akin, ako, I don't find being a majority leader and kahit pa paano, may major experience in tayo sa mga lawmaking.
Yes, sir.
Ako, ang tingin ko, wala namang dahilan, wala nang masamang dahilan na para lang huwag na lang magkaroon ng bycam later. Kung halimbawa, ilagay mo na lang isang, ilagay voting separately because wala naman talaga. We are doing that. So 100% mirror na talaga. Kasi otherwise, kung assuming kung yung iba magiging masyadong hindi, mag-iba tayo, pareho tayo sa lahat, sa baba. Pero nagkakaiba lang tayo doon sa taas, result, voting separately kami, wala. So magbabaykan pa kami yan. Ano lang ang pag-uusapan sa BICAM dito? I-adapt natin yung Senate version na nakalagay doon yung Senate. I-adapt yung sa amin na wala yan. Pero hindi naman pinag-uusapan yung sa baba dahil maayos yung sa baba. Diba? Yung mga, yung sharing na yung unless otherwise provided for by law. Sa akin, para so that we'll be able to avoid the possibility of the BICAM, kung ma-approve namin ito both houses of Congress, then, tanggalin na lang. Amend na lang namin. Total, during the period of amendment, pwede naman gawin yun.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, is it safe to say that's the House position, the position of the House leadership?
Pardon?
Is it safe to say that that is the position of the House leadership na, sige, pagbigyan na natin, i-amend na natin?
Wag. Ako lang. Sinuggest ko lang kanina. Whether that will come about or not, that's addressed to the plenary. Kung yan gugustuhin nila. Kung somebody will suggest that, at yun ay ma-adapt, then it will be included as part of individual amendment of the committee report or the resolution to be adopted.
Okay.
Okay, maraming salamat, Congressman.
Sir, maraming salamat.
Neptali Gonzales Jr.
Patrick, maraming salamat, of course, sa pagkakataon. And of course, our mga taga-subaybay magandang hapon.
Thank you, sir, for joining us.
That was Congressman Neptali Gonzales Jr. from Mandaluyong, and the Deputy House Speaker.
Yeah. Interesting, ha? So, although sabi nga...
So, walang pinagtatalunan.
Oh.
Ano lang, may mga samalan. We're just sensing tuloy pa rin yung medyo hurt feelings from
but yun nga, he
both
can't say
chambers.
at this point that it's a position of the House leadership. He's just saying it's a suggestion na pagbigyan na lang. Just put it in there.
Earlier, he said that they are adopting the House rules on this matter, and the House rule specifies voting separately. So, that's it. Siguro, hintayin na lang natin anong mangyari, di ba? We can only speculate so much about what might happen, whether this charter revisions will still encounter some resistance. Anyway.
Okay. You're watching Story Conference on One News. We just need to take a quick break. We'll be back in a bit.
This is the Story Conference Group, or the Storycon Group. Welcome back to Storycon, the Story Conference. I'm Patrick Paez with Lingao.
Where is Pastor Apollo Quiboloy? Let's ask his lawyer now, Attorney Ferdinand Topacio. Sir, Attorney, magandang hapon and thank you for joining us today.
Yes, good afternoon, Sir Ed, Sir Patrick. Thank you for having me on the show.
Good to see you again. Always looking bright and sunny. Sir, pero siyempre, alam mo naman,
Thank you.
entrado ko lang yun para tanongin sa inyo, asan ngayon si Pastor? Nakuha na niya yung, ano, di ba? Yung summons ng Senado. Pero siya ba'y, is he around? Is he going to attend? Is he may any conditions? Ano po?
Well, we are seriously studying our options, and just earlier this afternoon, the members of the legal team met, and we made a series of recommendations for him to consider. So, wala naman po categorical na sinasabi si Pastor Quiboloy na hindi siya pupunta. Kanya lamang, he has certain reservations. Even if you read yung statements po niya na na-publish sa ilang mga pahayagan, he simply has some reservations, and I do not blame him because mukhang hindi naman po in aid of legislation yung pagdinig ng committee ni Senator Risa Ontiveros. In aid of persecution po yun sapagkat kung titingnan nyo yung kanyang mga pronouncements ni Senator Ontiveros, it would appear that in her eyes, the pastor is already guilty of so many crimes, and it is not the place of the Senate to be pronouncing the guilt of anyone. That is not my opinion. That is the pronouncement of our Supreme Court, which according to the Civil Code, they form part of the law of the land.
Okay, sir, Attorney Topacio, yung inquiry naman po ng House of Representatives is not related to those cases filed in the US. So, is it possible that the pastor would find it more conducive to appear before the House inquiry?
In fact, they are. They are related. Some of the allegations there pertain to cases already filed in the United States. Yung iba pong witnesses na umapir doon are the same witnesses na nag-file po ng kaso sa Davao. Yung iba po ay na-dismiss na. Yung iba po ay nasa DOJ pa. So that means our judicial system, our system of justice is working. At ako yung sinasabi po ni Senator Ontiveros na in aid of legislation, anong legislation ang kino-contemplate niya? Kasi all of these pertain to alleged human trafficking, sexual abuse. Last year lang po, inamyendahan July 2023, nagkaroon po ng amendments sa human trafficking law. So, what legislation is he talking about? We do not perceive any po.
Attorney,
just at a bully pulpit to humiliate and degrade Pastor Quiboloy.
Attorney, yung House inquiry po, yung inquiry ng House of Representatives, baka doon, hindi kaya mas open na umattend doon si Pastor Quiboloy?
Kasi paano pong open, kitang-kita nyo naman na yung bias ng chairman in her public pronouncements, in her privilege speech, doon sa mga pinapakita yung mga witnesses na ni hindi mo alam yung tunay na pangalan, ni hindi mo alam kung sino sila, nakatago yung mga pagmumukha nila. Well, hindi po pwede na gano'n. It is a kangaroo court once again.
Okay.
Parang mangyayari na naman po dyan yung sa Parmali case na sinabi ng ating Korte Suprema late last year in the case of Ong versus Parmali na violate yung rights ng mga resource person.
Ito na lang, Attorney, si Pastor po ba nandito lang sa Pilipinas o...
Nandito lang po siya. Nandito lang po. Kausap ko lang po siya kanina. He's here and he is pondering on his options at the moment.
Pero Attorney, you made mention that he has some reservations. Pero in his YouTube statement, it was not just some reservations. He was talking about assassination. So, kaya medyo nagulat lahat na parang, ganun pala katindi ang pangamba ni Pastor Apollo Quiboloy. So ano po, in the end, has the pastor come to a decision? What is the recommendation of the legal team? Is he going to attend? Is he going to attend any of the two hearings, whether the Senate or the House? Magkaiba po yung dalawa?
Wala pa po sa ngayon because we just submitted to him our studies on the matter, the laws applicable, so he can make an intelligent and informed decision as to what to do with respect to the subpoena.
But what do you recommend, sir?
Well, I will have to plead the lawyer-client privilege on that one.
I knew that was coming.
Lawyer-client work product po kasi yun eh. That is covered by a lawyer-client confidentiality.
Yeah, well, I had to try.
Good try anyway, boss.
Pero sir, anyway, yun nga, I know what you mean. You're referring to the Supreme Court decision on the Farmally case. And the Supreme Court has said at least twice na any move to cite for contempt and detain witness who has been summoned, it has to be it has to be in aid of legislation.
Yes, and
not
I'm
for anything
very
else.
familiar with that case because I was the one who argued that case before the Supreme Court. Lincoln Ong was my client.
Okay.
Well, he still is.
But is there any way that the Senate can argue that this is in aid of legislation? We are planning to look at loopholes in current legislation with regard to cases of trafficking or no. But you know how it is, diba?
Well, in that case, then the Senate has to comply with the guidelines set down by the Supreme Court. In the case of Senate versus Ermita and Neri versus the Senate, wherein you have to submit together with subpoena a copy of the proposed legislation to the resource person.
Ayun.
So you would know how to prepare and a list of proposed questions, which the committee has not done. Why? Because they have no legislation in mind. Whatever legislation pertains to the testimony, I've looked at the testimony, lahat po yan covered na. Noong mga amendments, the most recent one, which I have said, was only in July last year, kung saan natakpan na po ang lahat ng loopholes sa human trafficking, yung ginawang crime against person instead of crime against honor, ang rape. In-expand po yung rape to include other acts that were previously not included in the purview of the term rape. Ano pang gusto nilang mangyari? Yun naman po eh. So talagang suspect po itong motives ni Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Pero sir, if I recall correctly, yung target date for the subpoena is March 5 or March 4?
Yes po, opo.
March 5
Opo, March 5 po.
Tuesday. In any case, kung sakali pong, just in case that Pastor decides with the recommendation from the legal team not to appear, what will be the recourse of Pastor Quiboloy if contempt is levied upon him?
Well, we will cross the bridge when we get there, but of course, just like in Neri versus Senate, there is always a recourse to the courts. Sapagkat sinabi naman po ng ating Korte Suprema, hindi po absolute ang kapangyarihan o poder ng Senado o ng lehislatura, pati ng mababang kapulungan, na mag-issue na lamang ng mag-issue ng subpoena. There are certain requisites, there are certain guidelines, and all other powers of government under a tripartite system of government, may limitasyon po yan.
Sir, last question ko. In reference yung tanong ni Pati kanina, kasi ang tanong ni Pati kanina was centered around the House investigation, the House inquiry, the House hearing, which I think is involving the SMNI case.
Franchise, yeah.
The SMNI franchise. Iba po yun dun sa, of course, yung sa hearing ng Senado.
Opo. In that case, I will have to defer to attorneys Mark Tolentino and Rolex Suplico because sila po yung lead dun po sa House hearings on the SMNI franchise.
Okay.
Attorney, I'm just curious about what prompted Pastor Quiboloy to come up with that video statement. It was an audio statement. We all know that it was in response to the summons from the House and the Senate. But in that video, it was very politically charged. So what should we make of that video statement of Pastor Quiboloy?
It should be taken in the context of all these acts of persecution being directed against him, the Kingdom of Jesus Christ, and SMNI, because hindi naman siguro coincidence na nagkaroon ng hearing on the cancellation of the franchise. There was a resolution urging the NTC to indefinitely suspend the franchise of SMNI. Then sinampi na si Pastor sa House, sinampi na siya rito sa Senado. Marami po na hindi kami naniniwala na coincidence lamang ito. Rather, it appears to be part of an orchestrated scheme in order to destroy the Kingdom of Jesus Christ and discredit and humiliate and degrade the Pastor Apollo Quiboloy.
Attorney was referring to surveillance by CIA and FBI in the Philippines. I mean, what sort of evidence do we have about this matter, regarding this matter?
Kasasabi lang po sa akin ng legal team po na may mga tao ro na monitor yung mga drones. But of course, there will be a dearth of evidence because if you read that book, Portrait of a Cold Warrior by Joseph Smith, a former CIA operative, talaga po mahihirapan tayong i-prove ang intervention ng CIA. That's why ang Islang term po sa kanila is spooks. They're like ghosts. Mahirap po silang makita. But rest assured that we would not be making such statements kung wala po kami nakikita na hand ng CIA dito and other shadowy organizations connected with the U.S. government.
Attorney, it's interesting that you made mention of that book because I read that book at least twice or 3 times, Joseph Smith. That was written in 1955 or 1960s.
Opo. Actually, sa tatay ko yung librong yun.
Very interesting narration of events during the time of Magsaysay up to the time of
how they make
Modiniem.
presidents, they intervened in Indonesia, etc., etc.
Yes, sir. But then again, that was a different time, different era
Wala
altogether.
pang electronic surveillance nun. Wala pang drone.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's even worse now because ngayon, hindi nga namin alam kung nag-meeting kami ron, may mga cellphone kaming dala kung namomonitor na kami. But, now it's even easier for the CIA to tap into other people's private conversations, etc.
So given these circumstances now, Attorney, what sort of precaution is Pastor taking apart from being scarce in public?
Well, that is the only precaution that we can take, and his deep and abiding faith that since he has done nothing wrong, then he should be protected by our laws.
So,
ang problema
nagsa-cellphone pa ho siya.
nangyayari.
Nagsa-cellphone po dahil alam nyo, delikado yung CIA, no? Do you have access to him through cellphone? Yan na lang.
Yes, we convert to the usual means, Zoom, cellphone. So wala po tayong magagawa. Those are the only means available to us to confer with our clients.
Attorney, last question. Alam ko may isa pa tayong guest na waiting, pero let me just throw this in. Pero Attorney, in the end, why would the CIA be interested in Pastor Apollo Quiboloy?
Yes.
Di ba? I understand FBI, I understand State Department, but why the CIA? What would the CIA gain by wanting to...
Good question.
By wanting to
Actually, hindi na
assassinate
po bagong
Quiboloy?
allegation namin yan. Noong 2020 pa yata yun. When the warrant, the federal warrant first came out against Pastor Quiboloy, sinasabi namin, there is an attempt to erode yung kanyang influensya rito because he was linked or his relationship with a former President Duterte. Presidente pa si Duterte noon, pa-election pa lamang po. Yun po ang aming alegasyon noon. And now, that there is we are in the midst of geopolitics. Ang Pilipinas ay nasa geopolitics at ang perception siguro ng Amerika ay pro-China. Si Pangulong Duterte at dinede-platform nila. Si Pangulong Duterte, sinisira niya ng Amerika yung kanyang support base, yung kanyang power base sa Pilipinas. And one linchpin of that power base is the Kingdom of Jesus Christ with its television station, with its radio station, and with a mass of followers numbering in the millions.
Okay. Marami pa sanang tanong pero maraming salamat, sir.
Thank you very much.
Attorney
It's always a pleasure po.
Topacio.
And hanggang sa susunod po, mabuhay
Yes, sir.
po kayo at lahat ng ugat sa inyong katawan.
Thank you, sir. Sige po.
Okay, that was Attorney Ferdinand Topacio, counsel to Pastor Quiboloy.
Let's now bring in Philippine Coast Guard spokesman Commodore J. Tariela. Sir, thank you for joining us. We apologize for the delay. Commodore J, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi, sir. Sir, magandang hapon, sir.
Yes, sir. Magandang hapon po sa inyo, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, sir. Sir, teka, yung huling napabalita nga lumabas sa Reuters yung floating barrels tinayo ulit ng China sa Scarborough Shoal. Ito rin po yung ginipit natin dati, no? Yung tinanggal dati?
Yes, sir. But although totoong ikinabit nila to, sir, nung February 22, sir, no? It supports our hypothesis, sir, no? Na the reason why they are putting this barrier is whenever they monitor the presence of the
Yes, sir.
Philippine government vessel, whether it is a Philippine Coast Guard or a Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, the moment na may ma-monitor sila, na vessel natin, sir, na proceeding sa Baho de Masinloc, ilalagay nila ito. However, every time na aalis din tayo, a few hours after, just like what happened here, no? Noong February 23 nung hapon, when the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources left, tinanggal din naman agad nila yung barrier nila, sir, sa Baho de Masinloc.
Parang parking, yung security guard sa parking, naglalagay ng lubid.
Okay. So tinatanggal din nila, Commodore.
Yes, sir.
Bakit? Bakit po? Para kayo naman daw pumasok this time? Parang ganun po ba yun?
Well, I think, sir, no, the reason why the Chinese Coast Guard is putting the barrier dito sa bukana ng lagoon ng Baho de Masinloc, it's because they are anticipating that the Philippine government vessels would attempt to enter the lagoon.
Okay.
And that is something that they are preventing for us to do, no? That's the reason why they are putting the barrier.
And yet they also take them down at some point, right? This is what you're saying?
Well, it's not about removing the barrier, sir. Their main effort is to make sure na hindi tayo makakapasok sa lagoon. On our part, sir, for the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources and for the Philippine Coast Guard, the guidance of the President is very clear to make sure that we're going to have government vessels supporting the Filipino fishermen and maintaining our presence in Baho de Masinloc. But for the Chinese Coast Guard, their main objective is to prevent the Philippine Coast Guard from entering the lagoon. Well, sa amin, what we're just doing is complying with the guidance of the President. No? We don't really intend to escalate the tension or to provoke anybody. But our main objective here is to ensure na ang mga mines ng Pilipino natin, sir, ay hindi mahaharap ng Chinese Coast Guard.
So given this order, Commodore, what's the next move of the Philippine Coast Guard?
Well, right now, sir, the Philippine Coast Guard is currently preparing our vessel for the deployment sa Baho de Masinloc because the guidance of the National Security Advisor is to have the rotational deployment. No?
Okay, so
we call it rotational deployment. Is that because kapag umalis na ang Coast Guard, then BFAR vessel lang papalit. And then, since kaaalis lang ng BFAR vessel dito sa Baho de Masinloc, it's now the responsibility of the Philippine Coast Guard to sustain our presence in Baho de Masinloc, sir.
does this involve taking down those barriers again, Commodore?
Well, those are operational details that
Okay.
I don't want to disclose to the public, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We understand, sir. Pero, sir, let me put it this way na lang, sir. Di ba, the barriers are there to prevent supposedly the Coast Guard, our Coast Guard, from going inside the lagoon. Tama ho ba? In which case,
Yes, sir.
In which case, sir, in the last few years ba, have we been able to go inside the lagoon? Did you have access to the lagoon? I ask that in the sense na parang, would it matter to us at this point, at this particular point, whether the barrier is there or not?
Well, there's one thing that we disclosed to the public in last year. No, we cut the barrier.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it allowed the Filipino fishermen to enter the lagoon.
Okay.
As to when was the last time na naglagay sila at hindi tayo nakapasok, or when was the only time that we were able to enter the lagoon at hindi na tayo nakalabas, I think the only information that I can provide right now starts on the year that we did our transparency.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, I understand, sir. You don't want to release operational details. Of course, that's understood. But is it safe to say that in the end, the Philippine government wants our fishermen to have access in the lagoon?
Well, as I said, sir, no, our plan now is to comply with the guidance of the President. That is to maintain our presence there and to protect the interest of the Filipino fishermen.
Okay.
Of course, we understand. Operation details, we can't press beyond that now.
But Commodore, did we hear correctly that the Coast Guard will be dispatching a boat to that area?
I'm sorry, sir.
Is the Coast Guard sending a boat to that area, to Baho de Masinloc, right now?
Yes, sir. Our Coast Guard vessels are being prepared now for our upcoming mission to sustain our presence in Baho de Masinloc.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Sir, maraming salamat. Commodore J. Tariela, ang tagapagsalta ng Philippine Coast Guard. Sir, thank you for joining us today and always good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you for your time,
Yes, sir.
Commodore.
Maraming pong salamat. Thanks, sir.
Commodore J. Tariela of the Philippine Coast Guard.
So the Coast Guard is sending a ship to that area. They're not disclosing operational details. They're not saying whether puputulin nila ulit yung mga barriers then or what.
Pero going back nga to what we did last year, I mean the Philippine government did last year, pinutol yung barrier para makapasok
Yung mga Filipino
mga
fishermen.
isda.
Oo.
So, we'll leave it at that. we'll let everybody else in China figure it out. Okay. Ano ba? Tapos ba ang ano? Okay, sige. Those are the stories that are the headlines, the stories behind the headlines. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Patrick Paez. Join the Story Conference again tomorrow at 4 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.